So good evening, everybody. It's so wonderful to be here. I am Janet Dupree. I'm a leadership and organizational development consultant from Engagement Dynamics. Following the completion of my master's recently, which focused on engaging stakeholders in the context of wicked problems, my mission is to maximize leadership impact, especially in the context of complex and pervasive problems. As a company, our flagship solution is our Astute Leader Program, and we're also currently promoting our 21st Century Astute Thinking mini-series. And I'm really grateful to the PSASA for this showcase opportunity. Over the last 6 years, alongside my master's studies, next slide. Over the last 6 years, alongside my master's studies, I've been intrigued by the emerging world which is confronting people who want to influence future outcomes. Societal change is progressive, which means that we are constantly on a transitional journey towards an emerging future. As future-focused leaders, we look to a constantly shifting horizon rather than a fixed point of accomplishment. The first future into which we are inexorably moving is a future of increasing integration of digital technologies into our human lives. I developed this slide in 2019 for a Disrupt HR presentation. It shows how 6 core elements have combined over centuries to create a growing range of technologies, which began to drive the fourth industrial revolution. By now, most of these terms are familiar to us. And while COVID may have distracted us from these developments, behind the scenes, academics and commercial enterprises have continued to explore how these base technologies can be improved and applied, hopefully to make life better. By 2020, we were introduced to ideas and conceptualizations which began to combine fundamental digital technologies, such as tree planting drones, green cement, sonic firefighting, and bioprinting. What's his name? Quick disclaimer, I'm not drunk, but I have had gastro for the last 24 hours, so if I'm falling over my words, that may be why. Imaginative innovators are now experimenting with and producing sand batteries, cultured dairy products, artificial trees capable of converting carbon dioxide to oxygen, energy storing building materials, clothes that hear, and sweat-powered watches. All of these technologies are emerging from the combination of base technologies, and the possibilities are truly limitless as the possible combinations expand exponentially. Alongside these incredible digital possibilities, our world is also moving towards some challenging outcomes of our past and present choices. Wicked or pervasive problems such as climate change, gender-based violence, poverty, and war are deeply ingrained issues which are extremely unlikely to ever go away. However, they are also so profoundly impactful that we cannot ignore them, because they can be influenced. These problems occur in the context of what I call wicked ecologies, systems which are firstly highly dynamic and constantly changing. Secondly, they are complex, entangled, interconnected, and generally open systems. Thus, changes occurring in one part of the system ripple out to other parts of the system. Finally, these systems are fraught with conflict, gaps, and differences. Varying degrees of polarization occur in knowledge, understanding, perspectives, resources, priorities, power, values, proximity, impact, and any number of other factors. And these differences may make agreement elusive. So we're also moving towards numerous potential threats and challenges born out of the changing complex and conflictual systems which exist in modern society. I've clustered these concerns into those related to the environment, to health and well-being, to interpersonal and national relationships, to technology, to economics, and to resource distribution. Few of these challenges are really new, but global connectedness, new and widening social gaps, and the increased speed of change are magnifying their impact, their scale, and their rate of growth. Paul Zane Pilzer, who was an economist who had an incredibly meteoric rise to impact, said that resources, and this is the good news, resources are actually unlimited because our minds are unlimited. Technology determines the supply of any given resource, and the advance of technology is determined by the exchange of information. Technology determines the need, and there is no limit to our economy or to the solutions that we can develop because there is no limit to demand and no limit to our imagination. Your immediate and our immediate economic potential is defined by our technology gaps, and never has the development in technology been more rapid than it is today. More covert and stealthy changes are happening in the way that people think. Some of these changes became apparent when millennials began to enter the workplace, prompting exploration and debate around how they should be managed. What most people did not realize was that the challenges which leaders were encountering with millennials were not just characteristic of this demographic, but were in fact symptoms of emerging new societal paradigms. Millennials were simply the first group to act out these changes en masse. I've been writing a series of blog posts highlighting the paradigmatic shifts from the 20th to the 21st century. That QR code on the screen will take you straight to these posts if you want to find out more. Few of the older paradigms have been completely eliminated, but the movement is definitely from the left-hand side of your screen to the right-hand side. My intention is not to name every change, but to highlight just a few. Up until the 20th century, the notion of an elite was commonplace and expected and accepted. Society viewed some people as more important than others, based on their class, their roles, their birthrights, or their family connections. Whilst historically there were uprisings among the proletariat and elitism is by no means dead, in the 21st century, there is growing agreement that the importance of all people is rooted in their basic human value, not in arbitrary accidents of birth. Along with the shift from elitist to everyone, traditional power dynamics are being aggressively challenged and parity sought between different power groups. I've often said that the most significant challenge facing 21st century leaders is the need to influence people who know that they have choice. Although we had choice in the 20th century, we didn't know it. However, the emerging generations know that they have choices, and they are not afraid to exercise them. So where leaders influenced through enforcement 100 years ago, today they will meet with resistance unless they find ways to effectively enroll people. This introduces the need for a fundamental revision of leadership beliefs and behaviors. In this context, it is vital that we move towards more effective engagement of stakeholders and more effective leadership. Fundamentally, engagement and leadership have changed and continue to do so. Before COVID distracted us from these massive challenges and changes, numerous thought leaders came out with short lists of vital skills for the 21st century and the fourth industrial revolution. Whilst there were many overlapping skills cited on these different lists, when I collected them all, there were in fact more than 50 future-focused skills relevant to leading in the 21st century. So I collected them and I developed the Astute Leader Framework. This framework clusters the 50-plus leader skills into 4 leader androrhythms, which is a delicious word coined by futurist Gerd Leonhard. And if you're not familiar with the term, an androrhythm is the human equivalent of an algorithm, where an algorithm is a program which governs a software application. An androrhythm is a human pattern of being which can drive effective human behavior. Just for clarity, I fundamentally believe that management should be focused on non-human resources and their management, and that leadership is directly related to the engagement of people. The 4 Andro rhythms each speak to critical behaviors and how they are exercised. Firstly, leaders need to be influential, and we believe that effective influence is rooted in being highly articulate and a master of messaging. Leaders also need to be insightful, and this insight is based on a range of specific ways of thinking and developing awareness. I often suggest that the 3rd Andro rhythm really should no longer be necessary. By now, we really should have learned how to connect meaningfully with other people. The reality, however, is that leaders are still really bad at this for the most part, and people paradigms are also shifting dramatically. So the 3rd Andro rhythm is interdependence, and we advocate for adult, egalitarian, and collaborative relationships between leaders and those whom they influence or seek to engage. The final Andro rhythm is about getting things done. Implementation needs to be adept and focused on new approaches to strategy and development. This is a much more detailed outline of the framework, which will probably be rather difficult for you to read right now, but more information is available on our website, which you can access using the QR code on the next slide. In the course of next year, we expect to begin accrediting practitioners to deliver our Student Leader Program, and you're most welcome to contact me if you'd be interested in that accreditation or sales partnerships. In the next few minutes, I'm going to dip into just a few of the 21st century leader thinking and qualities towards which I believe we need to be moving. Firstly, we need to be moving towards genuine engagement. Some of you have probably already heard me explain that there are 5 different meanings for the word engagement. Engagement is interaction, engagement is investment, engagement is enrollment, experience, and process. And this graphic demonstrates the dynamic engagement framework, which focuses on engagement as personal investment, especially in the context of work. When I first started studying engagement, I began with 2 observations. The first was that engagement is an individual construct. So looking at large scale or large group engagement statistics is actually not very helpful. The second was that engagement is not a static construct. So annual measurements are also pretty meaningless. We're all familiar with the linear engagement scale, which positions people somewhere on a continuum from highly disengaged to highly engaged. This landscape is more two-dimensional. It views engagement as a factor of resources investment and the choice or the will to invest in interactions or work. It makes allowance for constant fluctuations in commitment to an interaction and demonstrates alternatives to optimal engagement. Inviting workshop participants to position themselves on a floor map of this graphic reveals that rather than being disengaged, many individuals are actually working really hard under compulsion or are seriously depleted relative to task requirements. Leaders have to choose these dynamics and work to create an environment in which people choose to invest their personal resources in a sustained way over time, with the right levels of support and return for their investment. Optimal engagement is created by both leaders and employees. It is complex and requires leaders to listen extremely well to people. Because the problems that leaders encounter are increasingly complex, complexity thinking is a critical skill in the insight, be aware Andro rhythm. Dave Snowden's Cynefin framework greatly assists leaders to understand how to frame and make sense of the ordered and unordered problems and systems which they encounter in their work. It helps to ensure that they do not apply a hammer to every issue which must be resolved, and to frame appropriate responses to more complex challenges. Critically, the framework encourages emergent approaches to complex issues, urging leaders to probe, sense, and respond, and to develop safe-to-fail experiments to test alternative responses. Making sense of people and engaging them effectively requires leaders to understand them as five-fold beings. I use the acronym SPICE, with five-fold resources and five-fold needs. Seeing them through these lenses provides new ways to understand motivation and how people can be rewarded more effectively. It also helps to understand power dynamics. Power inequities are becoming very significant sources of contention. The spotlight has been strongly shone on the role of physical power in fostering and sustaining abusive relationships. However, leaders need to be aware that using any of these power dynamics to exploit others is tantamount to abuse or manipulation. All forms of power can and should be used to effect positive change, but used very carefully for personal gain. When leaders engage other people to effect positive change in the context of wicked, complex, or pervasive problems, they need to facilitate three key activities: fostering connection, forming collective intention, and taking experimental action. The connection part of this is often glossed over, but fuels the effectiveness of the other two activities. Stakeholders connect with themselves, with each other, with the problem, and with possible answers. They connect with vital information and possible thinking or problem-solving frameworks. They connect with the past and with the future, and with seemingly unconnected or remote parts of the system. These three activities must be collaborative, iteratively repeated, and constantly adapted in response to feedback, both from the system and from the outcomes of actions that have been taken. The collaborative aspect of this may be the most difficult to achieve. The connection of people on equal footing is hard without someone taking charge. The one key answer to this challenge is the development of powerful facilitation skills. Finally, I'd like to show you the design framework. And those of you who were on the call with Tebogo yesterday and saw her work on design thinking will probably recognize some of the steps in this process. This expands the process of design thinking just a little bit, provides a little more depth into the empathy aspect of design, and also looks at how design, innovation, new strategies are actually implemented and rolled out to have profound and long-term impact. The framework begins with sensing. And this is really a very, very key part of thinking in the 21st century, being able to sense with every aspect of our being, to hear, to see, to smell, to really touch the hearts of people, to understand problems at a very deep and profound level. The scene step in this process is particularly important, and it's one that I think has been neglected in some of the design thinking work. And the scene step is all about scenario planning and thinking into the future. One of the things that became so evident when we moved into COVID was the need to be thinking through what are the possible next steps, what is potentially going to happen in response to this pandemic. How might next week look or next year look? So scenario planning becoming extremely important, bringing the stakeholders into the picture, making sure that we've got all the right people at the table and that we're creating equal access for everybody is extremely important. Setting goals, searching for potential solutions, narrowing those solutions down to some that we want to prototype or to sample, stress testing those solutions, coming to the point where we decide either we are going to settle with this as a solution that we believe can work, or we're going to swivel or pivot back to one of the previous steps in the design process. If we decide that we're ready to settle, we can then build a model, build a system that potentially can be used to spread and to scale a solution. And if all of that works and we get beautifully scaled businesses or scaled solutions, we then have the ability to start all over again with a new innovation. And so I want to close with 3 final challenges to encourage us all to move forward. First of all, we need to move towards one another as people. We need to move towards our calling and our strengths. And we need to move towards a better tomorrow. Ultimately, we are moving towards the future that we are collectively creating. My challenge is for us to all take that which we have learned in the last week, to embrace our capacity to lead, to create, and to maximize our impact. Thank you.